Afghanistan really is blessed with a rich history, culture, and civilization, and of course used to be the superhighway of connectivity during the old Silk Road era. And of course, Afghanistan used to be a part of this greater region, both Central Asia and South Asia. And so that's why we share a common culture, civilization, and even languages with the rest of this region, which we have over the past 20 years since the fall of the Taliban have been drawn on and capitalized to enable Afghanistan to recapture, regain our former status in the region, not only, of course, as a connectivity geography, but also, of course, we were famously called as the Garden of Central Asia, and today's modern world, meaning providing the socioeconomic opportunities for our people, but also facilitate those opportunities across the region, both in the north and as well as in the south. And this has, of course, depended on security in Afghanistan and stability across the region. Unfortunately, over the past 20 years, a lack of regional cooperation, as much as there has always been a consensus on peace in Afghanistan, has enabled the Taliban to reconstitute after they failed in 2001 and to resurge in Afghanistan as we speak. Currently, across Afghanistan, they've been launching very destructive terrorist attacks, killing, maiming, displacing ordinary people, destroying connectivity infrastructure, which we have been hoping to use, connect Afghanistan and internally and as well as externally, not only benefit Afghans at home, but also benefit our neighbors so that we regain our national role as a land bridge between South Asia and Central Asia, which our president, Ashraf Haidari, recently discussed in the recent Tashkent South Asia, Central Asia Regional Connectivity Conference, the purpose of which was exactly how to help stabilize Afghanistan so that through Afghanistan, the two rich regions of Asia with common civilizations and cultural heritage could come together to focus on commercial people-to-people ties, business and investment to help the whole region prosper. So we have drawn on each of the attributes which you pointed out to help stabilize Afghanistan, but also to help bring the regions around us closer together, not only for economic activity, but also for cultural people-to-people ties. Because at the end of the day, the interests, demands, and needs of our youthful populations, both in Central Asia and South Asia, converge. They demand jobs that we need to work together to create in Afghanistan and the rest of the region. So without peace in Afghanistan and security in Afghanistan, that's impossible to be achieved. Well, we have, like I just said, striven to enhance connectivity across South Asia. Unfortunately, the principal impediment remains the tensions between India and Pakistan, which has so far prevented all sides, not just Afghanistan, but also the two neighbors, from engaging in the kind of economic and commercial activity that they should. Just basically learning from the experiences of the European Union and as well as ASEAN and other successful regional groupings, based on which, of course, SAARC was established with a similar common vision to help bring South Asia together to focus on socioeconomic development. Unfortunately, that has not materialized, and it's not only Afghanistan that has not benefited from the kind of integration that the pioneers of SAARC had envisioned. It's also Sri Lanka, India itself, Pakistan, Maldives, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. Despite that, however, we recently, in the recent years, launched what we call the Air Corridor, through which we have increased trade with primarily India, which mostly imports our dried nuts and fresh fruits. Something that I've also tried to extend to Sri Lanka, where there is immense interest in this, and I had a very good meeting. In fact, I should say meetings with the leadership of Sri Lanka, both with His Excellency the President and the Honorable Prime Minister, to help launch a weekly flight between Kabul and Colombo, which would not only, bring and take passengers and tourists, but also business people and as well as goods. This was going to take off very shortly before COVID-19 pandemic, but this unfortunately stalled it. There is continued interest in this. Just recently, we signed an air services agreement with Sri Lanka, initial, I must say, but which is ready to be signed. And we're working both sides to do so, to further facilitate air-to-air connectivity between Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. So as we have done these things, we have encouraged our neighbors to normalize their relationship, to focus on areas of win-win cooperation, where, of course, the traditional tension is still, holding everyone in the region back. Wouldn't impinge on that, but just focus on economic cooperation, cultural cooperation, of course, climate change cooperation, environmental protection of our region, which is one of the most vulnerable across the world. So there are many areas where Afghanistan has encouraged our neighborhood based on our foreign policy and priority to connect with everyone in the region and to bring everyone together to work together on issues that concern us commonly on the one hand, but also issues that can benefit us commonly, and thus, of course, increased trade and investment and people-to-people ties. Well, for a long time, that's been very effective, because we did attract investment not only from the region, including from South Asia, but also other regions. But as unfortunately security has deteriorated, it has been difficult to attract the kind of capital-intensive investment that Afghanistan needs in order to, contribute to private sector-led growth in Afghanistan, away from, over-reliance on foreign aid, and away from, as a result, a rentier economy that unfortunately has kept Afghanistan dependent. That said, there are a number of countries, including from Australia, which have continued showing an interest and have been in talks with us, especially in the natural resources sector. Remember that Afghanistan sits on over $1 trillion worth of minerals, including lithium, which is highly demanded by the information and technology firms and factories for manufacturing, cell phones and computers and so forth. And so, but unfortunately, security remains a priority, and the Afghan context, and I think the rest of the region and the world, it's security and peace that drives economics and vice versa. Some place, of course, economic cooperation can also incentivize security cooperation. But in our case, unfortunately, our neighborhood, especially Pakistan, is so much bent on holding on to a very narrow definition of national security, which drives their support for the Taliban to destabilize Afghanistan, and as a result, unfortunately, impede any economic activity, including attracting capital-intensive investment, which would foremost, of course, benefit not just us, but also the region itself, because much of the investment that we're looking for is to focus on major infrastructure projects and programs, being energy and water to transportation, especially transit transport. So, which would, as a result, benefit the neighborhood. So. Unfortunately, we had been expecting the withdrawal, but not in the way that it suddenly happened. We thought that, of course, most of the U.S. forces would be withdrawn, and we had been preparing for that since the end of the transition process in December 2014, when we took over the responsibility for protecting our population from NATO, and when NATO as a whole started to draw down. But we still were expecting to continue having a small number of forces on the ground with the critical enablers, such as the close air support for our forces, and as well as logistics and maintenance provided both by the NATO forces, but also a large number of contractors to enable our forces to continue defending Afghanistan against terrorism and external aggression. So as we speak, while the United States has firmly assured us of their continued enduring support for the Afghan security forces, and as well as economic and humanitarian assistance, we have to mostly rely on what we can do ourselves. And we are fast, especially our forces are adapting to a new combat environment without the enablers that they used to rely on. And they've been quite successful in terms of recapturing some of the districts which they, over the past month or so, lost to the Taliban. The Taliban, of course, having gained those areas, are not able to hold them, let alone govern them effectively or protecting people. Contrary to that, they have summarily executed civilians, some of our surrendered forces, destroyed over 260 public institutions, displaced over 4,000 public servants, and as well as leaving another 50,000 in a limbo without their jobs to actually continue serving our people across Afghanistan. It's a large country, several times larger than Sri Lanka. And they've also unfortunately displaced now close to 300,000 ordinary people. These are mostly peasants and farmers whose gardens and harvest they have burn as part of their scorched earth policy that they've been implementing. So the Afghan people have, as a result, rejected the Taliban, and that's why they've continued rising over the past month or so in support of our forces, joining ranks and fighting the Taliban together with our forces and taking back. And just to give you a figure, over the past 72 hours, they've taken back 24, now probably even more, because I haven't checked the latest figures of districts which the Taliban have captured. So we are determined to defend Afghanistan with or without U.S. support, Western support. It is our country. The morale of our forces is high. The people, are fiercely independent and freedom-seeking, and they will not, relent. They will not give up on the gains that we have achieved over the past 20 years with the support of the international community, including Sri Lanka. Well, I think the withdrawal of international forces from Afghanistan and the way that it has happened and the vacuum that is created for the Taliban, which is providing an umbrella for over 20 other terrorist groups from the region, but as well as from the rest of the world, transnational terrorist networks, including Al-Qaeda and Daesh. And so this has very serious implications for regional peace and stability, and as well as for the international peace and security. If you look at the Security Council Resolution 2513, which is based on early Security Council resolutions 1368 or 1269, and there over a dozen other Security Council resolutions which discuss the situation in Afghanistan being very much relevant to maintaining peace and security in the region and the rest of the international community, because what is happening in Afghanistan is a convergence of regional and transnational terrorist networks with, of course, agendas not just limited to Afghanistan, but countries in the North, Central Asia, and of course countries in the South and countries in the Greater Middle East, and including the homeland, security of NATO. And so that's why everyone in the region, from India, China to Russia, Iran, Turkey, are concerned about the recent developments in Afghanistan, as much as Pakistan shows that it has nothing to do with this, and they show concern and try to show that they're helping with the peace process in Afghanistan. The fact is that they are not in the way that they should, because if they just sealed up the door online and discontinued the provision of safe havens and logistic support, including medical treatment of the wounded. Just if you go on social media right now, you would see these lines of Taliban foot soldiers and crossing the door line back and forth, coming back with explosives which they used to incinerate the gardens and homes and fields of poor farmers in Afghanistan, and then taking back their wounded bodies for treatment in Pakistan. And of course, also the military advisors deployed with the Taliban to advise them on the targeting and execution of the military operations. And they're of course joined by then Daesh and Al-Qaeda definitely is very directly supporting, and members of Al-Qaeda from Uzbekistan, from Tajikistan, from even South Asia, and as far as Turkey. So this is not really about Afghanistan. This is about the region, and this is about the rest of the international community. And that's why we continue renewing our calls on everyone in the region, and as well as the rest of the international community, to help Afghanistan in the fight against resurgent terrorism led by the Taliban, with safe sanctuaries in our neighborhood. Connectivity, and this is where our president has focused so much, because really believes in win-win cooperation, where connectivity is at the center of this, so that we really realize the geography of Afghanistan as a connector, and as a connector of Central Asia and South Asia, which was the recent topic of discussion for leaders from both regions, and also leaders from outside came in to Tashkent to discuss both opportunities for regional connectivity, but as well as the challenges that confront this. And again, the key challenge which we've been discussing throughout this interview is the security in Afghanistan, which is very much, exported to the country, which can easily be addressed provided that the rest of the region acts on its consensus for the stabilization of Afghanistan. And we often bring this up in the also SCO meetings, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, because for a long time, members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have been complaining about the presence of NATO being in their backyard, and that causing the instability and insecurity that Afghanistan has been experiencing. And now we, call on them to replace NATO. Now that NATO is departed finally, now it's Afghanistan is in their own backyard of course, Russia and Central Asia, of Iran, which is an observer and very interested in acceding to SCO, and of course China, which borders with us in the northeast of Afghanistan, with militants of the East Turkestan Islamic Movement (ETIM) actively, being given sanctuary and training and support by the Taliban, as well as the sponsor of the Taliban. So for China, it is just not, a distant, remote security threat, but it is a direct threat, threatening the security and stability of the, Xinjiang province. And now, of course, SCO also includes India and Pakistan, and I think this organization is now a lot more inclusive, and including the players that can at least have a dialogue to be facilitated by other members of the SCO on addressing their own tensions and its implications for the regional peace and security, but also to engage them on Afghanistan and to bring everyone on the same page, and then get them to act, because with peace and stability in Afghanistan, the whole region would prosper. The whole region would be able to connect. Just think about, open borders between South Asia and Central Asia through Afghanistan, where you could just, get on a boat from Sri Lanka to India, on a train all the way to Pakistan, and then into Afghanistan and into Central Asia, and then coming back. It's possible, it can be done. It has happened in the past. Like I said in the beginning, that Afghanistan used to be the superhighway of the old Silk Roads, where goods were exchanged between the southernmost part of South Asia, was Sri Lanka, and where Afghans used to come here for business, all the way to Central Asia through Afghanistan. If we, the peoples of this region, with a shared civilization, with a shared heritage, much like Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, where of course one is Buddhist, another is Muslim, but we Afghans take pride in our Buddhist heritage, and that's of course we know based on the Gandhara region where Buddhism emerged, in which Afghanistan is a part of, and that's why we have the province of Bamyan, housing the largest statues of Buddha, which we have always protected and respected. Unfortunately, it was the Taliban which back in March 2001 dynamited the very identity of Afghanistan, and that really tragically made every Afghan sad and every part of the world. So that's what we are trying to prevent now as we defend Afghanistan, and as Afghanistan stabilizes with everyone's cooperation in the region. Would like to regain our former status, and of course with now present opportunities and emerging opportunities to serve as a land bridge between South Asia and Central Asia, East, West, all directions of Afghanistan, for what the youthful populations of South Asia and Central Asia actually need. Those are the jobs, and those jobs won't come unless we cooperate. And then of course I shouldn't also leave out the transnational challenge of climate change. I just happen to be the rotating Director General of the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program with the same membership of the SAARC, the 8 countries of South Asia, including Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, that our region, unfortunately, is the most vulnerable to the climate change impact. And unless we really come together, the governments and the private sectors of this region to help address this, fundamentally and in the long run, and consistent with, of course, our commitments, including to the, Paris Agreement in terms of reducing emissions or fighting, plastic pollution and so many other pollutants, including, of course, nitrogen, on which we're working at SACEP. It's hard to believe how our region would be able to cope with the recurrent disasters, such as climate-induced flash floods, now droughts, which has been heading across South Asia, including Afghanistan, especially is displacing hundreds of thousands of Afghans, many of them young, with no jobs, having lost their livestock, their arable land, and they're just climate migrants internally, but also externally. So you do see the spillover effects of just this transnational climate challenge that our region needs to tackle. And so that's why we encourage in Afghanistan the neighborhood of our country to really shift away from confrontation and come back to cooperation on addressing all those common challenges where everyone would benefit. And I think if any lesson that they could learn from pre-war Europe, that is that for probably over a century, the Europeans engaged in power politics and zero-sum games and zero-sum designs against each other, and that only destroyed them. They had to fight 2 world wars and lose millions of people and everything that they had achieved. Unfortunately, that brought them to European community and then now European Union, which is now inspiring so many other regions. So that is the only way forward. Zero-sum mentality, terrorist militarism is not helping the countries themselves, but also the rest of the region.